Welcome to Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tolchinsky with my first guest, Janice Shy.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. Janice, please tell me how did you get involved with square dancing in Japan, like your earlier life? How did you start with square dancing?
Yeah, I am probably one of the very few people that you'll meet who learned this American art form in Japan.
Yes.
And I had been, after I graduated from college, I went over to Japan to teach English because that seemed more fun than getting a real job. And I had been there for about 5 years working for the YMCA,
Yes.
which has an English school. And I was actually up at Tokyo University doing some sort of a translation help for a professor there. And while I was waiting for him to come, I was chatting with one of the secretaries. And a typical question when you teach English in Japan is, what's your hobby? What's your pastime? And this woman, instead of saying flower arrangement or tea ceremony or, the typical things, she said, "Oh, I like to do square dancing."
Oh, that was nice. And you didn't learn Japanese, you learned French. And so
Well, my major, so jumping way back, my major at Illinois State was French and marketing.
Oh.
But when I graduated, I was not confident in French and I was not that interested in marketing.
Yes.
So I just sort of said, I'm going to go teach English in Japan, which, you get paid to do it. So kind of, running away from whatever. I don't know what my parents thought about that, but that's how I landed in Japan with a French and marketing degree.
Oh, that is nice.
Yeah.
It's very, very trendy back in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, studying a foreign language helps you teach as a language too, because you know what it's like to be, struggling with the verbs or the adjectives or whatnot. So anyway, so I'm at this, reception area at a university in Tokyo, chatting with the secretary, who out of the blue says, "Yes, I like to square dance." Now, my parents had square danced when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
They just did it because it was very trendy back in those days. And so I was asking her more details, where do you square dance and how did you get started and so on. And then I don't know how this came up. She knew I was from Yokohama. I lived in Yokohama. This is Tokyo. It's probably like, 30, 40 miles away. And she said, "Oh, I have friends who are at a square dancing group in Yokohama." Now, Yokohama is a really big town, just like Chicago is.
Oh.
So like you could say, "Oh, I'm from Chicago," but if you live in Rogers Park, that's nowhere near like the South Side. They're both Chicago, right? So when she says, "Oh, I have a friend, I have friends at a square dancing group in Yokohama," I'm thinking, yeah, it's probably going to be way, other side of town. And then she said a name that was my next subway station.
Oh.
In fact, it was a place where I rode my bicycle past on the way to get to work. So it was, right next door. So I said, "Oh, well, why don't you put me in touch with them and I'll go see what it is, what happens." So that's how I met the Yokohama Sunny Coast Square Dance Group. And I joined, it was right around the time when lessons were starting, so it would have been around, August or September. And I was the only foreigner there. And my Japanese was so-so.
Yes.
And the instruction, teaching you how to do all the moves, was in Japanese.
Oh, that must be very difficult. How many people were there?
Oh, there was probably 30 or so, 35, 40, experienced square dancers and new people. So that began my very interesting career of learning square dancing in Japan. It was tough because there was no supporting materials or anything, and I had to try to figure out what they were saying to explain all the different moves. And sometimes I was more successful than others.
Yes. What kind of qualities did you, accomplish while trying to square dance in Japan? What kind of life lessons did you acquire?
Well, it was really awesome. It was great for my Japanese because I had to use every little bit that I had known to communicate or to chat with people. And then, of course, my hearing got a little bit better, hearing,
Yes.
understanding
Yes.
Japanese. It also was a really interesting look into the life of, typical Japanese people who were not part of the learning English category.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? These were just people that were blue-collar folks. Like there was a guy that made tatami mats for a job. There's like a car repair guy, housewives, people that I would not ordinarily get to interact with at my English school.
Oh, okay. So it drew everybody, not necessarily the white-collar executives,
Yeah.
but just like the heart of Japan.
Just normal people, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So by, daring to join this group, and I didn't even think, I'm just like, this is gonna be so funny, American learns American dance from Japanese in Japan. I still think it's funny. But, they would take me on picnics and they would take me to conventions and, I went to some of their homes. It was just a really cool way to get to know somebody from a different country, a different culture.
And how long were you in Japan for?
I went there right out of college, and I had a 2-year contract with the YMCA, but I was having so much fun that I just kept extending it. And before I know it, it was hitting the 10-year mark.
10 years in Asia. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That must be very...
I tell you, it changed my life.
So after the 10 years, you must be fluent.
I was not bad. It's been quite a few years since I came back, so my fluency is, down again.
Mm-hmm. And then, so after 10 years, you came to America. How was the transition?
It was tough. But I knew that I had to have some sort of a role when I came back here. So that's when I applied to journalism school at Medill at Northwestern University.
And then how did you start writing? I mean, was your English still like in a graduate level, still back in Japan, and then your dreams still back in Asia while you're focusing on American profession?
When I was in Japan, in addition to working for the YMCA and teaching English and all that good stuff, I was with the YMCA in like a coordinator position. So not just teaching English, I was creating programs and doing things for the other English teaching staff. So one of the things that I felt that they needed was a newsletter. Mm-hmm. So I developed a newsletter for them, and I published it every month. I would write freelance articles for English publications. Japan Times ran one of my stories once.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised. So that's how I kind of got interested in journalism. Yes. So when I decided, okay, I'm going to go back, I need to go back to school because I didn't feel I was employable in America with, teaching English. So that's how I ended up in the journalism program at Medill.
And then it took you 2 years to 3 years to finish?
No, that was a 1-year program.
Wow.
Because it was a graduate program. Mm-hmm. Undergrad, takes several years,
yes.
But the graduate was 1 year.
And so how did you meet your husband?
Well, I met him at the animal shelter.
The animal shelter? Yeah. That's a love story in the
making. So we're shifting to a whole new topic here. So I was living in Evanston, and I had finished grad school, and I decided, I've always loved animals, and I wanted a pet, and I figured probably a cat because, if you travel, you can't have a dog. But I thought, I have no experience with cats, so let's go learn about cats and dogs and stuff.
Cats, yes.
So I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, and eventually did adopt one cat and then a second cat. I was working on I was volunteering, yes. Taking care of dogs, And my husband, James, he was also a volunteer there, also taking care of dogs. We didn't meet for quite a while because he was on one night and I was on another night.
Oh, and then after a while, a love story came out.
Yeah. After a while, he actually came in on my night, and I met him and I was chatting with him. I'm like, oh, he's kind of interesting. And then I didn't see him for a while, and then we met him again. I met him again at another event with CARE, a dog wash, I think. And we were chatting again, and so it was just like meet him and then not see him for many months and then meet him again. Every time I'd see him, I'd be like, oh yeah, there's that really nice guy. And I was involved with somebody else at the time.
Oh.
And finally it came to a point where I was not involved with anybody else and he was not involved with anybody else. And I got up the nerve to ask him, then this is funny, by chance, we both lived on the same street. And I would sometimes see him walking his dog, which is a strong young pit bull. And pit bulls are great. And she would be pulling him down the street, and really pretty dog. And so at this event, I said, you know, I would really like to meet your dog one of these days.
Oh, very flirtatious.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say it like that, but it's just like, oh, you know, I see you're walking your dog. I'd really like to meet your dog one of these days. You know, we should get together. So at that point, he gave me his phone number, and then apparently he told me afterwards that he went back to his office the next day and he told his friends at the office, hey, this really nice woman wants to meet my dog.
Oh, that's very nice.
Well, they were, you know, they were smarter than he was. They fell on the floor laughing. They're like, God, dude, she's hitting on you. She wants to meet you. He's like, oh, I thought she wanted to meet my dog. Anyway, eventually, you know, like a few weeks later, I got the nerve up to call him and say, you know, maybe, you know, want to get together for coffee or something. And the rest is history.
I was just wondering, tell me more about the shelter. Like, is it, does it rescue, like, no kill from other shelters, or how does it operate?
Yeah, so the shelter, or the group that we were volunteering with and still are, is called Community Animal Rescue Effort. And it's CARE for short. CARE is a no-kill shelter, and we get a lot of our animals, our dogs and our cats, from Chicago Animal Care and Control. So we're able to go down there and, you know, just kind of figure out which are the animals that have the best personalities, the best chance of finding a new home. And
to be adopted.
To be adopted, yeah, to help them out.
And how do you know, like, when a dog's ready to be adopted? Like, how do you advertise that in the local area?
Good question. So again, I'm just going to speak for CARE because that's what I know the best. So we take a dog in, we make sure, or a cat, and we give it a medical checkup to make sure it's healthy. We give it all its shots. We put a microchip in it. Do you know what a microchip is?
Yes.
To make sure, you know, if it's lost, then you can scan it and find the name of the owner. And then we write up a description for it. Take beautiful photos, because photos are one of the most important ways to help an animal find a new home. And then we post it on our website, on social media, and our website guru, she posts the animals' descriptions to like pet finder websites, petfinder.com and so on. So if you're looking for, you know, this type of dog or this type of cat, this age, this personality, you can do a search, and then you find the animal, and then you can apply to meet it, and hopefully, you know, it's a good match and you bring it home and everybody's happy.
What do you tell owners before, or like how does an owner get screened for insurances and crime, or like, you know, like how does an owner get screened?
Well, we have to, if the person or the family lives in a rental apartment, then we ask to see their lease to make sure pets are allowed.
Okay.
That's one thing. Another thing is we want to make sure that the personality of the pet and the lifestyle of the people are a good match. So for example, some dogs and I'll just talk about dogs right now. Some dogs would be really, really high energy, and they need to constantly be stimulated or have, jobs to do. And if you're a person who's like has a walking issue, or you're not very active, this would not be a good match because the dog would probably tear up your house and not be a good companion. So yeah, we want to just make sure that the personality of the animal and the personalities and lifestyles of people are a good fit.
And then do you screen owners if they have like anything, if they have the income, and then if they're aware of the shots and everything else, like the insurance?
We talk to them quite extensively about that. When people apply, or when people want to meet an animal from care, we have an online adoption application, which is really, really complete. We ask about, have you had pets before? What happened to them? Where did you keep them? When they got sick, what did you do? How many people in your family? Just all kinds of things. So if you look at our adoption application, you'll see what kind of screening that we do beforehand.
And then I understand that pet insurance is expensive now, or is there any laws that are changing to have seniors help out with pet insurance?
I think pet insurance is still an optional thing. It's a good idea. In fact, I just ran into, by chance, I met a man that sells insurance.
Oh, yes.
And he's like, I've got pet insurance for my animals, and you should too. And
I know they're like 80/20, they're like Medicare, or like there's just like a joke like that.
We had pet insurance for our first dog, and then we opted not to for our cats. But we just had a cat get sick. Our oldest cat got sick, and it cost us $2,000.
$2,000.
And it was 3 vet visits and then 1 overnight stay at the emergency clinic. So it's like nothing, zero, or just like health checks, every year, and then suddenly, it skyrockets.
Please tell me about the facility opening in Skokie.
Yeah, so this is really exciting. Care opened a building in August. It's about 10,000 square feet. We have space for about 30 cats and 20 dogs, and it's the first time that Care has had its own building ever. Huge community room for events. It will be serving people in Glenview and the entire North Shore, and our animals will come from Chicago, like we discussed before. It's just terrifically beautiful. I am so excited.
So please tell me about Glenview Squares, of how you founded, or how did you come about in the Glenview area?
How did I land? Okay, so I live in Morton Grove, and the closest square dance group was Glenview.
Yes.
So I'll go back to Japan real fast. When I came back from Japan, I did not square dance here, so that was in the 90s. And in the 90s, square dancing in America was, if you're not a couple, this is not for you. So some years later, I got married to James, and I'm a couple, so maybe I wanted to bring James to Japan so he could meet my friends there and meet my square dancing friends. But I knew that in order to meet my square dancing friends, he probably needed to learn. So in October of 2003 or 4, I don't remember exactly, we started taking lessons with Glenview Squares.
Oh.
And then in April of the following year, we went to Japan for like a 2-week, 10-day trip. And we did not learn everything, and I had pretty much forgotten most of the stuff. But we learned a lot, but not everything, but enough to enjoy dancing with our friends in Japan.
How are the calls different between American and
They're the same.
They're the same.
They're the same. And that's a kind of the cool thing about square dancing is you can dance anywhere in the world as long as you know the calls. The difference would be that, if a Japanese caller is calling, you may not understand his accent.
Oh, okay.
But so I have a friend, you know, a Canadian girlfriend in Japan who I've never actually met face to face, but we're friends on Facebook, so I feel like I know her. And she is right now, she's at an international square dance convention in the Netherlands.
Wow,
Yeah.
that must be interesting.
I'm very envious that
Yes,
she could
a lot
go.
of people are.
We had two friends from our square dance club went to a Swedish square dance convention in June. And there's square dancers in Australia, France, Germany, Japan.
And then when did you become a caller, or when did you start?
So me, I'm not a caller. I don't have that kind of a brain.
Mm-hmm.
In order to become a caller, you need to have attention to detail, a good head for math and patterns. And do you know what a Rubik's Cube is?
Yes. Yes.
So for a square dance caller, it's kind of like working a human Rubik's Cube. So you mix everybody up. You know, you've got 4 couples in a certain position. You mix them all up, and then by a certain time, you've got to get them back with the same partner in the same position. And so James he started learning how to call about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And on Friday, he actually called at his first, you know, real dance.
Wow, that must be like a growing step from dancer to caller.
It's pretty impressive.
How long is like the caller workshop or the school?
Well, to become a caller, it's like an ongoing thing. It's, you know, like with anything, the more you learn, the more there is to learn. So he practices every day, and he takes every chance he can to call at a dance, you know, like at our Glenview Squares dances. And I mentioned to you earlier that he's going to be teaching our intermediate level for square dance classes.
Nice. How do you like the Glenview area or the traffic in Glen?
I kind of love Glenview.
Yeah.
I tell James that if we ever leave Morton Grove, we would have to move to Glenview.
Yeah, it's just a lot of senior retirement communities.
Hey, we're not senior.
Yeah, yeah.
But our lessons are at the Park Center, which is just beautiful. And we've partnered with a bookstore in Glenview. Do you know the Book Market?
Yes, I know the Book Market.
They have a nice space, perfect for dancing. And we've held our caller workshops there. We hold some of our benefit dances for care there. So our dog has been there for dances.
Oh, nice, nice.
And that's the Glen and the Park Center and Trader Joe's are like some of my favorite areas in Glenview.
Very feasible. Like I know, like what is the fee to taking a class? Like,
it works out to, I think, let's see, if you're a Glenview resident, it's $50 for 18 weeks.
That's very nice.
For 2-hour classes.
Yeah. And I think like it really helps out for empty nesters and other people.
Exactly, yeah. So if you're an empty nester and you're like, oh dear, what do we do? This will occupy your time.
And it's a community that you're building, like social.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was wondering, do you have any plans to grow within the Glenview square dancing? Like, is there like another level you'd like to achieve? Both as a founder and a dancer.
Our club is closing in on 100 members now, which is, when I took over, I didn't take over, but when I became more active on the board, it was, 60 and falling, because there were so many retired, really, really old people, like in their 80s.
And for women, is there any like hesitancy to like play like the male and female? Like sometimes people don't have partners and they shy away from like attending.
In our club, we have a lot of people like myself who can dance either on the right side or the left side.
Oh, good.
So if somebody comes in and they don't have a partner, we've got plenty of folks to dance with them.
Thank you, Janice, for this wonderful conversation about square dancing and animal caregiving.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for watching Real People, Real Matters with Diana Tolchinsky. Please watch us again.